Hello and welcome to Women in the Driving Seat, where we take the time to shine a spotlight on the wonderful women in automotive. This week, we're going to be talking about Stellantis, that huge automotive company that owns Peugeot, Citroën, DS, Vauxhall, Fiat, Jeep, Leapmotor, Abarth and Alfa. I think I've got them all. I'm joined by two quite extraordinary women in Stellantis. We have Diane Miller, Plant Director of Ellesmere Port, and Alison Jones, Global Chief Parts and Services Officer. A very warm welcome to you both. I'm slightly trembling about this episode, I must say. Before we get into the thick of it, we have, as usual, our guest bios. Alison. Alison is Global Chief Parts and Services Officer for Stellantis, having just been promoted from Senior Vice President, Global Circular Economy. She has worked in a wide variety of roles in the auto industry over the years, and was also president of the SMMT, Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, for 2 years, alongside the day job. Alison is happily married to Nick. I have to just slightly laugh there because you're the first person to insert the word happily before married in this podcast. So good on you. They have 3 adult children and have just welcomed a new puppy to the family. Diane Miller. Diane has been plant director of Ellesmere Port for 3 years. It is the first all-electric assembly plant globally for Stellantis and first large OEM in the UK. Before that, for over 30 years, she has worked in many manufacturing roles in various plants in the UK and USA, and it has certainly never been boring, she says. Originally from Ireland, married to Steve, who is American, they have an 18-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter, both born in England. The family loves to travel whenever the busy work schedules allow. I can't imagine they allow for much. Anyway, hello, thank you both very much for joining me today. So we'll get straight into the first question, which is what's been going on in your week. What plates have you been spinning? What balls have you been dropping? Alison.
Hi, Erin. So this week has all been about old job, new job, different countries. So I've been doing some induction. I've been running some meetings, having discussions about customer issues, technical topics, fixes for vehicles, new product launches, and in different time zones as well. So sometimes I do early, sometimes I do late. And then at home, new puppy, new family time.
What kind of puppy is it?
It's an Australian Cavadoodle, which is a combination, but very cute, very cute.
Oh, and so have you been in the UK this week?
I have. It's a UK-based week this week. So,
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
Is that usual or unusual?
It is usual. It's mixed. So when I travel for blocks, and we'll probably get onto that. So I'll travel for a period of time. So week of the 17th, I'll be in the US for a week and just really condense what I do. Then I come back, then I go somewhere else. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, we'll get into that. I can tell there's been a podcast where I'm going to be exhausted listening to you both by the end of it. And what about you, Diane? What's been going on in your week? Plates spun, balls dropped?
Yeah. So at work, we had a breakdown on the press shop, and we had to then have regular meetings to make sure that we didn't stop any plant, our plant, or the 2 other plants we supply. And then we also were doing a video to try and attract our Luton colleagues to come up to the northwest and work and live in that area with us. So a lot of the people were very worried about doing a video for the first time, but they came across really well. Mm-hmm. Home-wise, my daughter and I are going to see Gracie Abrams on Friday. We hope, but there's a lot of stress because she's cancelled 2 appearances in Nottingham and Leeds, and so because of her throat. So we're hoping that she comes back in time for London. We're doing Manchester, but she's doing London before that. So my daughter's very worried.
And what sort of working hours do you do? Can it be anything on any given day?
Mostly I start work at 6:30 and finish around 5:30 or 6. But I can be doing meetings later than that. We do have part of the plant 3-shift operation. So in theory, I could be called in the middle of the night, but so far for the last few months, we haven't had any big issues.
Okay, so let's dive into my next question then, which was, what does being a plant director entail? I mean, we were just talking about this before we started the cameras rolling, as it were, about, you know, everyone has an idea, I think, of kind of Victorian industrialisation when they think about factories or plants, and that it's all kind of big, heavy, grinding, loud machinery, and everyone's got to wear a boiler suit and has oil-stained fingers. What does your job entail?
It's not like that anymore at all. It's for me, it's more about people, because especially in the general assembly part where they put all the interior in and the motors and the batteries, that's mainly done by people. Body shop is more automated, where we put the body together, and the paint shop again has a lot of people making sure the car is clean enough to paint. So it's very bright, more automation than there was before, and what we're trying to do is get young girls to understand it's not that type of place. So International Women's Day on Saturday. Tomorrow we're bringing some of the schools, local schools, in so that they can see it. And as I said to Alison, and Alison agrees, when you see a car plant, it is really impressive, and people really want to get involved. So I think it's taking away the imagination and showing the reality.
Yeah.
She's underselling it, right? So she took it through transformation. So she closed the plant, kept the team running, drove a transformation to bring it back as an electric van factory. And in that period, it's like massive project management on a scale you can't imagine, to then make it go live and then make it work, delivering vehicles off the line. You were saying 15 vehicles per hour?
Every hour, yes.
15 vehicles every
Vans.
hour. So the automation.
Vans and passenger vehicles, the passenger side of it. So Combi Life and things
It's
like
a
that.
massive, massive project management, people, process, operation. But it's fascinating. Whenever you're in there, you cannot fail to be impressed by the way a vehicle plant works.
Is it noisy? It's quite quiet?
It's relatively quiet. Some of the most thing is the music. So people say, should you let them have music? But it's a very repetitive job, and all the research says the music makes you more productive.
Yeah.
So I think that it's good for them, and they love to have the different music. So music is probably the loudest thing in there.
Are there any jobs left now in manufacturing or in a plant where you need a degree of physicality, of physical strength, where you would say that is a job more suited to a man than a woman?
Not really, no, because if we don't want anybody doing too much that's too strenuous. So all the jobs are ergonomically assessed. We put in handling aids or things like that to make it easier if it is very strenuous. So really, I can't think of any that a woman can't do.
And talk me through, this is probably a silly question, but I always think if I'm thinking it, somebody else is thinking it. So, for example, give me a model that's manufactured at the moment at Ellesmere Port.
The Citroen Berlingo.
Right. So with Berlingo, are you taking all the components from scratch and doing the whole thing all the way through to the finished thing coming off the production line, ready for sale?
So we start with a coil of steel, so just flat steel, and then we have a press shop which presses it into the shapes of the body that you see all over. And then we paint it. So we dip it in anti-corrosion, and then we paint the nice colour, nice shiny stuff. And then it goes, and then all the other parts come in, bumpers, carpets, and we put all of those in the car.
Engines would come assembled, wouldn't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. And the only place where
Sorry,
I've
not
been...
engines, your battery now.
Motors,
So, yeah, your
but similar.
Yeah. The only plant that I've been to before was Sunderland, and that was a while ago. And the overriding thing that I took away from it was the space, because those conveyor belts for the assembly were constantly moving. If you were given a part on the assembly line, you would literally physically move along the assembly line, and you'd have a digital clock counting down that you had to finish assembling that bit of the vehicle in that time before the next one came along. Otherwise, the whole thing was going to grind to a halt. And I thought, the pressure and stress of that.
Well, exactly. That is how it is, but we have to try and make it as easy as possible for people. So what we do is we kit the car. So someone in a separate area puts all the parts for the particular car in the particular place on a little trolley that comes along on an automated guided vehicle. We're less conveyors now. And that comes along to where the person is, so moves, as you say, with the person, and they just put the parts on. And it's the part for that particular vehicle, which is, we have 79 different types. So if you tried to ask our people to remember it all, it is very difficult. So we try and make it as easy for them to do as possible.
Right. This, of course, all feeds into circular economy eventually, because it's all parts of supply, procurement, energy, wastewater, all of it. Alison, I know you've recently been promoted, but if we can talk a bit about circular economy, for people that don't really understand what circular economy is all about, as it relates to Stellantis and Stellantis' whole business model and revenue and doing its bit for the planet, can you talk to us a bit about the circular economy?
Yeah, so circular economy is anything scope about recycling, reusing material, remanufacturing, we'll come on to that, and your ability and repairing, which we've done in the industry for years. So we don't have water and energy inside the circular economy business unit. That sits with manufacturing. So that sits with like Dianne and her colleagues, because that's our big issues, water and energy. So they do work within the manufacturing team. So then in circular economy, it's about how we take any aspect. So it's about using less material, using it for longer, and then when you can't use it any longer, you recycle it. So in the area of parts, we will take old parts, and you can either reuse them. So we have an e-commerce platform, B Parts, to buy and sell reused parts, or we remanufacture. Now, remanufacture is a really exciting niche of our business because it's not really talked about. It's where you bring old parts back, strip them down, engines, transmissions, alternators, many different things, strip them down, add some few new components, wear and tear items, and build it back as good as new. So what that does for a customer, it provides them an affordable solution that is up to 80% less raw material taken from the planet and up to 50% less non-emitted CO2. So we've been progressing that either in-house or with suppliers. So Mirafiori in Italy is one of our plants where we build vehicles, but also now we have a plant that is dedicated to circular economy activities. And that includes remanufacturing of engines and gearboxes. And so we focus on that from parts. And then you go, okay, then we can't do that. What can we recycle? So can we take material that cannot be reused for whatever reason and recycle it? So we're very good at that in manufacturing. So if we have scraps, we call it the old material, like Diane was talking about the stamping plant, there is offcuts, any industry offcuts. So can you recycle that? And we've been good at that as a company, but what we're trying to then do is say, can we take that material, put it through a process so it goes straight back into Diane's plant, straight back into the plant, so it's literally circular. The same for old parts. Can you put them through a process? Alloy wheels, can you shot blast them at the end of process, put them through a process and get that material back in to our circle to be able to produce more vehicles? And then the other part is how you design in the first place, how you design a vehicle or a part so that it's designed to be able to do all of this through. And that'll take a long time, but some of my team work in the area of design. So when you're thinking about a new vehicle, there's how much recycled content can you get into that vehicle, and then how can you design it or design the different components so that you can repair them more easily or recycle them more easily at the end. So it's a whole host of areas that you can get involved in.
Thinking about that, batteries, it is a particular topic of conversation, isn't it, increasingly? And the way that cells come together within that battery pack, and the way that battery pack is put into the car, whether it's part of the architecture, increasingly if you want more rigidity, trying to put it in as part of the frame, and so on. It requires all sorts of conversations to take place right the way back down the supply chain, doesn't it? If you're talking about batteries, if you're sourcing batteries externally, you've got to figure all that out well in advance. It must mean that you're having conversations now for eventual use in cars that aren't going to be on sale for a number of years yet, because you've got to start that conversation really early for some of this stuff.
Well, you have, but it doesn't have to be so far away, because batteries. There's a hot topic. Do you glue batteries? Right, because if you glue them, that's lower cost to produce the battery. Right, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, please do.
But if you don't glue them and you do what we do and you actually build all of the cells to modules into a pack, it means that if it fails, you can repair, you can replace one module, or you can.
Yeah.
So those that glue, you cannot do that. Yeah. Right. Once that fails, and at some point it will fail, that has to go straight to recycling. So you get a lower immediate cost, but actually the on cost for the customer or the residual value of the vehicles is affected by it. So we take predominantly a fix. You can fix it, so you can repair it and you can recycle it. That means that if in years to come a battery needs replacing, you can repair it, you can remanufacture it, and then you can replace it. Keeps the residual value of the vehicles higher, a bit more affordable for the customer once it gets into, used vehicles many years down the road. And that's the hot topic. But then, of course, in all of that, there's legislation in Europe coming to say increase the percentage of recycled content. So then that drives you to have recycling facilities. You've also then say, okay, how do I make it work for the customer? How do we manufacture them? How do we recycle them? You've got all of that. And at the same time, you've got changing chemistry, because we're also trying to increase the amount of miles that you can drive on one battery, which is great. We're trying to make them last longer. So at the time you're making them last longer, there's less material to support the recycled content that you're trying to put into the new one. So it's a maths game and also a science game as well. So there's many different groups of people who can work on different parts of that chain.
And also a comms game, right? Because how do you then, what does the consumer need to know out of all of this? And how on earth are you going to convey it to them in any sort of accessible form at the point of sale? Well, and when they're doing research and consideration. And also, you're talking about Stellantis, but then you've got all these disparate brands that I mentioned forming part of the group. Does each brand need different sorts of messaging because they've got different sorts of customers? Do you have a separate comms team working on strategy around circular economy?
No, so we have one comms team on circular economy. So for circular economy, that's common to all of what we do in Stellantis. So you can then take that as a brand and apply it in a different way that fits for the customer base that you're trying to respond to. I mean, length of mileage on batteries is common to any brand, but some brands might choose to say, okay, and you could see this coming in the future. So Diane and I are talking because she has plastic injection moulding in Ellesmere Port, and we're like, okay, can we get recycled pellets to go into that? So then in future you could say, this bumper is the DNA of a Fiat or an Abarth or something, because it's come from old Fiat or Abarth. So you have the DNA in it. So that's the messaging. But in circular economy more broadly, it's about sustainability. It's about how you want to live your life as a consumer or as a citizen, which is no different to any other industry.
We're already halfway through, which means it's time for everybody's favourite moment, podcast pit stop. Are you ready? We'll start with you, Diane. Why not? Quick fire round. 6 simple questions. Plant or factory? I just never know. Which word you meant to use?
We use plant, but...
Is it the same thing?
Well, because you'd mentioned that, I've never even thought about it, but a plant is more than one building. If it's a factory, it's just one building.
I did not know
I didn't know until you asked the question.
If you don't know it, make it up. That's the subtitle of this podcast. Manufacturing or production? Same question. I don't know. Is that the same thing?
Production is probably more putting things together, and manufacturing is more like what Alison was saying with the injection moulding.
Oh, okay.
So just putting the bits in, or the stamping plant, or the injection moulding. So we do both.
Solar or wind?
Solar, because it's easier because of the planning permission.
Okay, good answer. City streets or country roads?
Country roads.
Sandwich or soup?
Soup.
Ireland or England?
Ireland.
Nice. Alison?
Yeah.
Plane or train?
Depends where I'm going.
Plump for one.
Train.
Plug-in hybrid or self-charging hybrid?
Plug-in hybrid.
Hotel or Airbnb?
Hotel.
Ethical sourcing or sustainable sourcing? Ooh.
Can't be ethical sourcing.
ESG or DE&I? We always have one on
ESG.
jargon. Because it kind of includes, right? Italy or France?
I'm not answering that.
Good. Well done. That's that over. You'll be pleased to hear. Let's get back into it. Diane, do you know how many women work at Ellesmere Port?
Not very many, about 2%, so about 30.
Right.
And
so got to be on a mission about that.
Yeah,
right?
and we're trying. Even when we recruit, we don't get the people applying. So, and it seems to be worse in the northwest, because in the south there's more people in our Luton plant. So we're not sure why.
Right.
But that's why we're getting out to the schools, and once we, as I said, once we get women in, they do enjoy it, and the teams work a lot better.
Yeah.
The men work really well with the women, so it's not an issue. It's just like you were saying, perception.
Yeah.
I think.
And do you have all ages? Because I often think, you know, when we talk about recruitment, and recruitment of women, but I suppose as men as well, the word recruitment, you're thinking, oh, pipeline, that means bringing people up through school and university or apprenticeships, degrees, whatever. But what about women wanting to completely transition career or have a new place to work in their 30s, 40s, 50s?
I think that is a great thing that we haven't focused on enough. I'm not sure exactly how to focus on it and how to attract people, but I have met women who've done that, and I think that that's perfect for us because they'd have experience, be more mature and happy to work in different teams. So it's just about how you would get people, how we attract them again in that way.
And how many of the vehicles that are coming off the line at Ellesmere Port are due for export?
It's about 20%, I think. It was higher, but right now it's about 20%.
So does that mean, I hate to utter the T word, this podcast is not about politics, but with everything that's going on at the moment, global trade wars and tariffs and so on, does that mean you personally in your role end up being kind of dragged into or jumping into conversations about, you know, trade wars? Does that impinge on your role?
Well, we work with the Society of Motor Manufacturing Traders that Alison was the president of. So, and we work with other OEMs on how we can manage that. Yes, so it does. So we do try and have a common direction in the industry, because obviously it impacts every manufacturer in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, life is not dull at the moment in automotive, is it?
Certainly not. And being all electric with the confusion, we've committed. We're fully committed, and all OEMs all vehicle manufacturers are going that way. But we're getting less people buying them. People, from what you said, how we comms, how we tell people that they are good, they are reliable. You don't have any problems, range anxiety. So, but there's no real push on the government side to buy them anymore, which there was when we made the decision to go all electric.
God, it's really multifaceted, your role, isn't it? I mean, you're talking about the basic day-to-day job, as Alison said, very people-based job of running the factory, but also with a kind of a view on everything else that's going on in the UK industrial landscape, manufacturing landscape, how that interacts with Europe and how it certainly interacts with China and America at the moment.
Absolutely, because if we can't sell the volume, then we're not viable anymore. So we need to make sure that we can sell the volume.
Yeah. Alison, I mean, you've got a global role. You've had a global role for a while. How does global politics impact your role?
Well, it does, because, I mean, Diane's used the example of the UK government changing, you know, saying 2030, no, we'll line up to 2035 has an impact. So you have the same in different countries, same in different regions around the world. So whether it be tariffs or government changes or direction, that has an impact on what you do. What we have to try and do is take a direction and be ahead maybe of decisions that are made, or be flexible, adaptable to be able to adapt. That's what you do. But that's true of all companies, all jobs that you do. You try and adapt. But obviously when you have something quite major happen, it really shifts it. But we had the same when we went through Brexit. You know, we didn't have a decision as a country for automotive until the 27th of December, when it was, go live was the 1st of January. When we think about vehicle cycles or decisions of investment or anything we're going to do, that's a really short, I mean, it's impossibly short window. So you have to have a whole host of scenarios, and we do in both our jobs, I think. You have to have scenarios that you can plan and you can adapt. As you said, it's never dull, but it's a lot of thinking, adapting, making. But you then have to have a clear vision as well. So you have to know where you're going.
Yeah.
You have we call guide rails. You have direct, and you'll adapt, course correct within it. But you have to set and know clear vision. Otherwise, you would be pulled left and right all of the time. Yeah. So you have to do both things at the same time.
I'm sticking with this idea of a global role because I'm just fascinated by that, and how on earth, this podcast is very much about that collision space between personal and professional, because, that's where I think really as women we thrive. How on earth, which regions of the world take up most of your time? How much time is spent in the UK? How much time is spent travelling?
I'm doing a global role, and Teams and communication is like a godsend, So I call it thoughtful travel. I'll travel and I'll go for an intense period of time. So I'll go for like from a Sunday to a Saturday, so like a week, and just be really intense. So when I'm in the US, I do this thing of trying to keep to the UK time clock. It started when I had a wedding to come back on the Saturday, and I'm like, I need to be fully present for a family wedding. So I get up at 2, start work at 3, do my European work, then go do a full day in the US, then come back and then go to sleep, get up and do the same thing. And you can do that for a 5 or 6 day period and you get so much done. But that relies on planning. So now I'm going in 2 weeks' time, already have it blocked out. Okay, so we need to do this. That's the dealership. That's the warehouse I want to go to. That's the suppliers we want to talk to. And you max on the things where you physically being present makes a difference. The things when you're in meetings and different discussions, you do remotely. So yeah, I share my time around the world, and that's what I do in a week. That's how I work. I don't get up at 2 a.m. when I'm in the UK, but that's how I use a week. So you start early because you're in China.
I was going to say China.
Asia Pacific, in China into Asia Pacific. Then the Middle East team are there. Then the Europeans are there, and then my North American colleagues come online about lunchtime, and then we go on.
And if you're do you do European days, trips in a day? Do you do much of that, flying out the same day?
You can do it over. So that's when I was thinking about your train, right? So the Eurostar is amazing, right? So you can get in, you can get on the Eurostar, get on the metro, get all the way to our French office really easily. Do the flight when I go to the Italy team and Germany team. So I normally do overnight. So I'll do a really early, go overnight, and then come back really late the next day, or do 3 days like that. Same thing, max out the time.
How do you unwind? Not so much back in the UK, but, I do a fair bit of travel for work as well. And I find if I spent all day in a car, a train, on a plane, in a hotel, dinner at a reception, all day sitting down, basically, I start to feel very frazzled. And I've either got to, I'm not a gym bunny, but I've either got to go out for a walk around the block, or I've got to go down to the beach if it's some sort of coastal location, or do some yoga in my room on YouTube, something. I just can't exist like that. Do you get like that?
No. No, if I'm away, it's like maximum work time.
Really?
And you just max out on the work because that's efficient. But I've lived my life in block, compartmentalised. That's the way I manage my time.
And how does motherhood fit into that? And your kids are older now.
Yeah, they are.
But were you doing global stuff when they were younger?
No, I was doing away from home stuff. So I did a role when I was working away from home Monday to Friday. But no. So my children have grown up with me in the industry. So they've grown up now. I now have a laptop. I used to have computers. Now I have a laptop. And they keep me grounded about it. Yeah, but they're in their 20s now. So I have flexibility that I didn't have when they were younger. But I used to get up earlier, get ready so I could spend time with them when they were babies, get dressed very last minute before you go out the door, hoping there's no sick down the back of your suit when we wore suits. And just juggle, managed. But you have to make choices, right? Life is about choices. You don't always choose the jobs you want to do, because there's been years when you've gone for jobs and not got them. But there are certain jobs I didn't go for because it would compromise what family life would have been like. It's family decisions on some roles. And I don't think you can do everything. You choose whether you want to do a job and, how you want to live your family life. And that's okay. That's what I tell people. That's okay. You look at people and think you've got it all. You're like, no, people have made choices in their lives about what they will do. And I've definitely made choices about what I won't do. And that's probably taken me longer to get to the role that I am at now compared to others. But I'm okay with that.
I think children also see the work ethic and learn a lot from you. I think they admire that you're doing that. And I'm sure your family do as well, see what work ethic she has and how she delivers it. So I do think the children get a gain from that also.
Well, and also, Dan, it sounds like you do long hours. You're not afraid to spend a lot of time at the coalface. How's it been for you with the kids?
The same thing, and because my husband's family was in America, my family were in Ireland, so it was a lot of juggling between us, but a lot of nursery when they were younger. But we do, in the industry, we do get a year's maternity leave, so for each of them full pay, you get a year's maternity leave for my 2 children, so that did help at the start. And then once they got involved in school, and you just juggle with that.
It's a really big topic, isn't it? I think you're right, Alison. It's always about choices. I guess where there's a choice, it normally means somewhere there's a sacrifice as well, right? And the trick is, I think, once you've made that choice / sacrifice, is not to then castigate yourself or look back or have regrets, because what's the point anyway? The choice has been taken. But if you recognise that there will always be a downside, whichever way you choose to jump, being a mother, and to live with that, it's half the battle, isn't it? But it's a tricky battle. I mean, I find myself with boys aged 14 and 11, I suddenly realise now how little I saw them when they were growing up, because I was just divorced and trying to build a career and putting everything into that. And now I am sad because I think I did miss out on a lot of it. But what's the point in this sadness I'm carrying around?
You can't change it, Erin, can you? All you can do is say what you're going to do now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I feel myself getting all emotional. I mean, that's another one there, right there. But I think, look at us. You're right, Diane. It's absolutely about role modelling for girls and boys coming through. And again, you don't realise the power of that until you see your sons or daughters turn around and say, well, my mum works full time. Doesn't your mum work full time? Oh, not that there's anything wrong either with being a stay-at-home mum. As we say, it's about those choices. But it is an important part of the fabric of society. Yeah. Oh my God, we're almost already at the end, which means it's time for tips and tricks. And I think hints for women and parents of girls listening to you two, really important. What you have to say about, Diane, if we come to you first, actually either hints and tips for women starting their careers and thinking about manufacturing, and or women thinking maybe they're in some other part of the automotive industry or another industry and thinking, I really quite fancy a job at Ellesmere Port. I mean, what are the kind of roles, what are the kind of skills you're looking for, what are the kind of people you're looking for, how might one go about it?
What we need especially now is people who can supervise, who can make sure that the people are doing the right thing, are doing quality, making quality, make sure everything's safe. That's one of the biggest issues. We have to walk around. Sometimes it is like children, because nowadays with the phones, please be off your phone. It's like at home I'm telling everyone to be off their phone, and at work I'm telling them, because if people get distracted, then they're not doing the right thing. They're not going to be safe, and they're not going to do quality. The woman that we have in there that can work with people and it's non-confrontational, just say we're all working together to do the right thing, instead of coming across I'm the top, I'm the manager, which sometimes some men might do more than a woman. Just be empathetic and say, but we're all trying to get there together. So support people to do the right thing. And I think that's where women can make a difference from the old traditional manufacturing, where you keep doing, much more supportive rather than dictatorial.
Yeah, we definitely need far more women in manufacturing, don't we? Alison, any tips for women after a promotion to a global board position? Because there'll be women in middle management looking ahead, there'll be women in senior management looking for the next jump, maybe thinking it looks like a really big jump. I've no idea how to do this.
I talk about, and it links to what Diane said about transferable skills. So when you apply for a job, or when you get approached about a job, depending on where you are, some people will say, well, you can't do this, but it's about transferable skills. So yours was a great example, because you can have people who've been supervisors, when they've worked in Argos or wherever, and they've been team leaders, they can take those skills and they can apply them to supervisor role in manufacturing. We have so many different roles in our industry. All three of us are in completely different parts with different skills. And the same is true of a global role. So I always try and don't do that, 2 jobs ahead at the next role and try and work out what would I need to be able to do that job. I think that's a good tip. So you'll never have all of the skills, because if you did, you would be doing the job already. So work out what you have got, work out what skill you can take and you can transfer across, and then tell people that you're interested in those roles. That's the other thing. I used to think you'd get it on merit or on your results. But actually you need to tell the hiring managers, and more than one, not just rely on one, about the role that you're interested in. That really can help you. And then I've not actually said about global, because global is just a bigger version of that to me. You know, global does require some flexibility to operate in different time zones. But the type of job, you could do it as a UK-based job, or you could do it as a global job. So think about the type of job you really like, the skills you like to use, the technical skills you like to use, and then look for that job in your company or in your industry that you want to do.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. It's been really fascinating. Thank you to everyone listening out there. Please follow, like, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.